I woke to the soft touch of lips on my cheek. Matt was already dressed and ready to leave. His face held a mixture of apology and haste. The sun had barely risen outside the window, and I knew that once again he was heading to work earlier than usual. "I'm sorry, Ellen," he whispered, kissing me again. "They moved the meeting up to 9. I'll try to be back soon, I promise. Today is your day." My day. I was turning 42. It wasn't a round number or a special anniversary, but Matt had always made a big deal of my birthdays. In 18 years of marriage, he had never once forgotten to wish me well. He had never left me without his attention, without a gift, without that special look that said more than 1,000 words. "It's okay," I smiled, though I felt a slight twinge of disappointment inside. "I understand. Work is work." He kissed me one more time, on the lips, and I caught the familiar scent of his cologne, the one he'd worn for the last 3 years, the same one I gave him for our anniversary. He hadn't changed it since. It was so typical of Matt to find something he liked and stay loyal to it. "Tonight, we'll have time just for us," he promised. "I'll make your favorite dish and open that bottle of wine we always have for celebrations. It will be perfect." When the door closed behind him, I stayed in bed for a while, staring at the ceiling, 42 years old. At that age, my mother had already had my little sister and me. She had built a career and bought a house. And what had I accomplished in all these years? Still, complaining would be a sin. I had a husband who loved me, a good job at an insurance company, an apartment in a nice neighborhood in New York, even if it wasn't very big. We were never able to have children, but Matt and I had accepted that long ago. Sometimes I felt it had even brought us closer, just the two of us against the world, our small, unbreakable fortress. I got up, took a shower, and made myself a strong coffee. A birthday on a weekday had always seemed a bit sad to me. Everyone is at work, busy with their own things, and you're there in the middle of your daily life, trying to feel like it's a special day. But who remembers, besides you and your loved ones? At the office they greeted me with flowers, and a small cake my coworker Laura had bought. We celebrated with coffee in the break room. We discussed the latest news and laughed at our boss's latest eccentricity. It was all familiar, warm, and comfortable. But the whole time, I was only thinking about the evening, about how Matt would cook dinner, how we would sit by candlelight, how he would pull out that bottle of our favorite wine. That wine had become a sort of tradition for us. We first opened it on our first wedding anniversary, chosen at random from a wine shop, a Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. We liked it so much that we decided to buy the exact same one for every celebration. Matt's birthday, my birthday, our anniversary, New Year's Eve, always the same wine. It was our little family tradition, something that connected us, that reminded us of the early years of our marriage, a time when everything was simple and clear. When I got home around 6 p.m., I found Matt was already there. A delicious smell wafted from the kitchen, and I smiled, picturing him carefully preparing something special. My heart filled with warmth. There was my Matt, always reliable, always thoughtful. "Ellen," he called from the kitchen, "you're home. Great, go put on something nice. I'm almost done." I went to the bedroom and chose a dark blue dress that Matt had always loved. I touched up my makeup and let my hair down. Looking in the mirror, I thought about how quickly time flies. The first wrinkles were appearing around my eyes. Gray hairs peeked through at my temples despite my regular dye jobs. 42 wasn't youth anymore, but it wasn't old age either. It was a strange in-between age where you no longer have illusions about the future, but you still believe there's time for happiness. When I came out of the bedroom, Matt had already set the table in the living room. Candles, a white tablecloth, our best dinnerware. On the table were plates of baked sea bass, my favorite, a salad, and fresh bread. And of course that bottle of wine. The familiar label, the familiar shape of the bottle. How many times had we opened it over the years? 20, 30, more? "Oh my God, Matt, it's beautiful," I sighed, walking over to him. He hugged me, and for a moment, I nestled against his chest, feeling all the day's fatigue and worries melt away. "Only the best for my favorite woman," he said, kissing the top of my head. "Sit down, I'll open the wine." I sat at the table, admiring the splendor he had created for me. Matt took the corkscrew and, with a practiced motion, opened the bottle. The characteristic pop, a familiar sound I had heard so many times. He poured the wine into the glasses, placing mine in front of me and his across from me. "To you, Ellen," he said, raising his glass. "To my love, my beauty, my wife, for being with me all these years, for giving my life meaning." I smiled, feeling tears well up in my eyes. Not of sadness, no, but of happiness, of that simple domestic joy, of knowing I wasn't alone, that beside me was a man who loved me. We clinked our glasses, and I brought mine to my lips, but before I took a sip, I caught the aroma and froze. Something was wrong. The wine always smelled the same, light notes of cherry, oak, and spice. I knew that scent by heart. I could recognize it among hundreds. But now, there was something else, something strange, barely perceptible but definitely there, a bitter undertone that had never been there before. A chemical, almost medicinal scent, hidden beneath the familiar notes of the wine. I looked up at Matt. He had already taken a small sip from his glass and was watching me with a smile, waiting for me to try mine. "Is something wrong?" he asked, noticing my confusion. I brought the glass to my nose again and sniffed. Something was definitely not right. Maybe the wine had gone bad, but we always stored it properly in a cool place. And the shelf life of a wine like this is enormous. Maybe the producers had changed the formula. But then, why was the smell so strange? Almost alarming. "Ellen?" Matt repeated, a note of concern in his voice. "Are you okay?" I looked at his glass, then at mine. The same bottle, the same wine. But why then did the scent from my glass seem different? Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was just overtired, and my sense of smell was playing tricks on me. "Everything's fine," I said, "but I didn't drink. It's just, the wine has a bit of a strange aroma. Don't you notice it?" Matt frowned and brought his glass to his nose. "No, it seems fine to me. Our usual wine. Maybe you have a stuffy nose or you're wearing a different perfume today." I shook my head. My perfume was the same as always, and my nose wasn't stuffy. I could clearly smell that odd scent, but it was so faint, so subtle, that I began to doubt my own senses. And then, suddenly, a wild, absurd thought crossed my mind. What if there's something in my glass? What if someone put something in there? But that was crazy. Who could have done it? Matt? My husband, with whom I had lived for 18 years? I looked at him. He was across from me, eating his fish, smiling at me. Everything was as it always was. No trace of nervousness, not a shadow of anxiety in his eyes. Just a normal evening, a normal celebration. I suddenly felt like an idiot for my suspicions. What was wrong with me? Why had I become so paranoid? But the smell wouldn't go away. It was there in my glass, subtle, almost imperceptible, but definitely present. "Matt," I said slowly, "where did you buy this wine?" He looked up from his plate, a little surprised by my question. "At our usual wine shop, where we always get it. It's just that it smells different to me." Matt smelled his wine again and shrugged. "Seems normal to me. Maybe it's a different batch or vintage. Though no, the label says the same year. That's odd." He took another sip, and I watched the movement of his throat as he swallowed. If there were something wrong with the wine, he would have noticed it. He would have told me, right? Or maybe the problem was only in my glass. The idea hit me with such force that I almost dropped my glass. Only my glass. Not the wine in the bottle, not both glasses, but specifically mine. I glanced toward the kitchen, trying to remember. Matt had poured the wine here in the living room. I had seen him do it. But before that, the glasses were in the kitchen. He could have. No, that was absurd, complete madness. But I couldn't shake the thought from my head, and the more I thought about it, the more uneasy I became. What if someone really had put something in my glass? But why? And who? The only person who had been home before me was Matt. I looked at my husband. He was eating his dinner, looking completely calm, relaxed. I really must be going crazy. Maybe I should just drink the wine and stop making up nonsense. But the fear that had settled in my gut wouldn't let me. My survival instinct was screaming, "Don't drink it. Something is wrong. Matt, I said, trying to make my voice sound light and casual. I think I accidentally took your glass. Let's switch. It was a lie. I had seen perfectly which glass he had placed in front of me and which in front of himself. But I needed to check. I needed to be sure that I was just being paranoid, that this was all a product of my feverish imagination. Matt looked up, a bit surprised. Are you sure? I think we each have our own. No, I'm sure I mixed them up, I insisted, offering him my glass and taking his. Come on, let's switch. For a fraction of a second, something flickered across his face, something I couldn't immediately identify. Surprise? Anxiety? Irritation? Or was I imagining that too? All right, he said, shrugging, and took my glass. I raised his glass to my nose. I sniffed. Pure wine. Only wine. No strange smell, no weird chemical notes. Just our beloved Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. My heart began to beat faster, so I wasn't crazy. So there really was something in my glass. But what? And more importantly, why? I watched as Matt brought my glass, now his glass, to his lips, how he took a small sip, how he swallowed. His face didn't change. He didn't hesitate. He seemed to notice nothing unusual. Or he was just very good at hiding his emotions. See? Perfectly normal, he said, setting the glass down. Our usual wine. You must be tired, Ellen. Too many worries at work, too much stress. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was exhausted, and my imagination had run wild. Maybe there was no strange smell, and I had made it all up. But then, why couldn't I shake this feeling of alarm? Why was every cell in my body screaming that something was terribly wrong? We continued with dinner. I ate the fish, which was truly delicious. I drank the wine from Matt's glass, which was absolutely normal. We talked about work, about plans for the weekend, about a new series I wanted to watch. Everything was normal, everything was as it always was, but I couldn't relax. I watched Matt out of the corner of my eye, noticing every little detail, how he held the glass, how often he drank, how he looked at me. About 10 minutes passed since we had switched glasses, maybe a little less. Matt was telling me a story from work, something about a new employee who was always late. I nodded, pretending to listen, but all my thoughts were elsewhere. And then he stopped mid-sentence. He just paused, as if he had forgotten what he was talking about. I looked up and saw that his face had gone pale, not drastically, but noticeably, and beads of sweat were forming on his forehead. Matt? I asked, my heart sinking. Are you okay? He ran a hand over his face, as if trying to wipe away something invisible. I don't know, he said slowly. I feel strange. My head is spinning. I jumped out of my chair and rushed to his side. His skin was clammy and cold. His eyes seemed a little unfocused. Maybe it's just exhaustion, I suggested, though panic was rising inside me. It wasn't just exhaustion. It was something else. Ellen, he said, and a note of fear entered his voice. I feel really sick. He tried to stand, but his legs gave way, and he slumped heavily back into the chair. I took his hand and felt his pulse racing, becoming irregular. Matt, what's wrong? What do you feel? Nausea, he managed to say, and a really strong dizziness, and a strange tightness in my chest, like it's being squeezed. Oh my God. Oh my God. It was whatever was in my glass, whatever was supposed to affect me. But instead, it had affected him when we switched glasses. I'm calling 911, I said, pulling out my phone with trembling hands. Ellen, no, Matt tried to object. Maybe it's just something I ate. Matt, you're as white as a sheet, and you're getting worse. I'm calling 911 right now. I dialed 911. I waited for the operator to answer. In a voice that sounded surprisingly calm, given my inner turmoil, I explained the situation. My husband had suddenly fallen ill. Dizziness, nausea, chest pain, possible poisoning. The word poisoning hung in the air between us. When I hung up, Matt was staring at me, his eyes wide. Poisoning? He repeated. But from what? We ate the same thing. Yes, we had eaten the same thing. But we had drunk from different glasses, the glasses we had swapped, and it was right after drinking from my glass that he had gotten sick. "Matt," I said, kneeling beside him and taking his cold, damp hand in mine, "did you add something to my wine?" He looked at me as if I were speaking a foreign language. "What? What are you talking about?" "To my wine, to my glass. Did you put something in it?" "Ellen, what are you talking about?" He tried to sit up straight but groaned and clutched his head. "Why would I put something in your wine?" "I don't know. That's exactly what I'm trying to understand." Fear appeared in his eyes, not physical fear from the pain or sickness, but another kind of fear, the fear of understanding. You think I tried to poison you?" he whispered. "Ellen, how could you? I love you. I would never." He didn't finish the sentence because he suddenly vomited on the floor. I jumped back, but was at his side again in an instant, holding him as his body convulsed. When the spasm passed, he leaned back in the chair, exhausted. His face was wet with sweat and tears. "I'm sorry," he rasped. "No, don't be silly. The ambulance will be here soon. Everything's going to be fine." But would it be fine? I looked at my husband, the man I had lived with for nearly 2 decades, and suddenly realized I didn't know him. I didn't know him at all. Because if he really had tried to poison me, if he really had put something in my wine, then who was he? A monster? A murderer? Or the victim of someone else's plan? The ambulance arrived in 15 minutes that felt like an eternity. I opened the door to 2 paramedics, a middle-aged man with a tired face and a young woman with short, dark hair. "Where's the patient?" the man asked, and I led them to the living room. Matt was sitting where I had left him, hunched over, his head in his hands. His shirt was soaked with sweat. On the floor was the vomit I hadn't had time to clean up. The paramedics quickly examined him, taking his blood pressure, pulse, and temperature. They asked questions that Matt answered with difficulty. He was speaking unclearly, like someone who was drunk. "What did he eat and drink today?" the woman asked me. "Fish, salad, bread, and wine. Red wine." "The alcohol could have intensified the reaction," the male paramedic said, preparing the stretcher. "We need to take him to the hospital. It looks like poisoning, but we won't know with what until we run some tests." They placed Matt on the stretcher and covered him with a blanket. I grabbed my purse, phone, and keys. At the doorway, I turned and looked back at the set table, the 2 wine glasses, the remnants of our celebratory dinner that had turned into a nightmare, and then it hit me, the glasses. I had to save the glasses. If there really was something in one of them, it would prove I wasn't crazy. It would explain what had happened. "Wait," I told the paramedics. "1 minute." I went back to the table, took both glasses, and carefully placed them in the kitchen sink, trying not to spill the contents. Then I found 2 large Ziploc bags, the kind I used for storing food. I poured the remaining wine from each glass into a separate bag and labeled them, "Mine and Matt's." I sealed them and put them in the fridge. Maybe I was being paranoid, maybe this was all pointless, but something inside me told me it was important that these samples could be the key to unraveling what happened tonight. At the hospital, everything blurred into an endless nightmare. The bright lights of the emergency room, people in white coats, questions, forms, tests. They took Matt somewhere deep inside the hospital, and I was left in the hallway, sitting on a hard plastic chair, clutching my phone and feeling reality slip through my fingers. It was my birthday, a day that should have been special, happy, filled with love. Instead, I was sitting in a hospital, not knowing if my husband would survive, and not knowing if he had tried to kill me. That thought stabbed at me again and again like a sharp knife. Matt, my Matt, the man I trusted more than anyone in the world. Could he? But if it wasn't him, then who? I tried to remember the past few weeks, the past few months. Had there been anything unusual in his behavior, any strangeness I had overlooked or dismissed? To be honest, for the last 6 months, Matt had been different, more distant, more thoughtful. He often stayed late at work, saying they had a big new project that needed more of his time. I believed him. I didn't doubt him. Why would I? We had a good, solid marriage. We trusted each other. Or did I just think we did? I remembered his phone. Lately, he had become more protective of it. He always had it with him, even when he went to shower. Before, he would leave it lying around anywhere, and it didn't matter. But now, the phone was always with him. He had set a new password, one he hadn't told me. We used to know each other's passwords. It was a natural thing for a couple. But now, I shook my head, trying to push the thoughts away. Maybe I was just overthinking. Maybe none of it was real. An hour later, a doctor came into the hallway. He was a young man in a white coat with a tired but attentive look. Family of Matt Rogers? I jumped up. I'm his wife. How is he? The doctor looked at me, and there was something in his gaze that made my heart stop. Your husband is stable. We've pumped his stomach, put him on an IV, and taken blood and urine samples. Preliminary results show the presence of barbiturates in his system in a significant concentration. Barbiturates? I repeated, feeling the floor drop out from under me. But what is that? They're sedatives, sleeping pills. In high doses, they can be fatal. They cause respiratory depression, loss of consciousness, coma. Your husband was lucky we acted quickly and that the dose wasn't lethal. Though without the stomach pump and supportive therapy, it could have ended very badly. I stood there, unable to move, unable to even breathe properly. Barbiturates, sleeping pills, in Matt's body. The thing that was in my glass, that should have affected me. How could they have gotten into his system? The doctor asked, looking at me intently. Does your husband take any kind of sleeping medication? Could he have accidentally taken too high a dose? I shook my head. No, he doesn't take anything like that. He has no trouble sleeping at all. Then how did they get into his body? I looked at the doctor, and my lips trembled as I spoke words I didn't want to believe myself. I think someone put them in his wine, or rather, in my wine, but we switched glasses. The doctor's brow furrowed. You suspect this was an intentional poisoning? I don't know. I don't know what to think. In that case, we'll have to contact the police, the doctor said. If your suspicions are correct, this is a criminal matter. Police? Investigation? Interrogations? It all seemed unreal, as if it were happening to someone else, in a movie or a book. Can I see my husband? I asked. Yes, but just for a moment. He needs to rest. The doctor led me to an ICU room where Matt was lying. He was hooked up to several IVs. He had an oxygen mask on. His skin was still pale, but his breathing seemed steady. I approached the bed and took his hand. It was warm, alive. The tears I had been holding back all this time finally came. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm sorry I thought that about you. I'm so sorry. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I had been wrong, because the questions remained unanswered. Who had put barbiturates in my wine? When and why? Matt's eyes fluttered open, and he looked at me through the mask. His gaze was hazy, but I could see something like relief in it. Ellen, he rasped. What? What happened? You were poisoned, Matt. They found sleeping pills in your system. A lot of them. He blinked, as if trying to process my words. But how? I haven't taken any sleeping pills. I know. Someone put them in the wine. In my wine. But we switched glasses, remember? And you drank from my glass. Understanding slowly dawned on his clouded mind. I saw his eyes widen, saw the horror appear in them. Someone tried to poison you? He whispered. Who? Why? I don't know, Matt. I have no idea. But even as I said the words, I was thinking about who had access to the glasses, who could have put something in them. And the only answer that came to mind was the one I refused to accept. Matt. Only he had been home before me. Only he had prepared the dinner, set the table, poured the wine. But then that meant he had tried to poison me and had accidentally drunk the poison himself. It would be logical, if not for one detail. Why would he do it? Why would my husband, with whom I had lived for 18 years, suddenly want to kill me? A nurse came into the room, checked the monitors, made a note on his chart, and then looked at me. You should probably go home and get some rest. Your husband will be under observation all night. You can visit him tomorrow during regular hours. I didn't want to leave, but I knew the nurse was right. There was nothing I could do there. It was better to go home and try to understand what had happened. I kissed Matt on the forehead, promised to come back in the morning, and left the hospital. Outside, it was already late, dark, and cold. I took a cab home, my mind racing with the same questions. Who did it? And why? At home, the first thing I did was go to the kitchen, take the 2 bags with the wine samples from the fridge, look at them, and put them back. Tomorrow, I would take them to be analyzed. That would provide answers to at least some of my questions. Then I went back to the living room. The table was still set, the food cold on the plates, the candles long since burned out. I started to clean up, automatically stacking the dirty dishes, throwing away the leftover food. When I picked up the wine bottle, I noticed something strange about the label. A small smear of glue, as if it had been peeled off and stuck back on. I held the bottle up to the light. Yes, the edge of the label was definitely damaged, very subtly, almost imperceptibly, but visible if you looked closely. Someone had opened this bottle before Matt brought it home. Or Matt himself had opened it. I set the bottle on the table, feeling a cold, heavy weight grow inside me. If the label was damaged, it meant someone had opened the bottle beforehand. They had added something, then recorked it and glued the label back on. But who and where? At the wine shop? At home? Somewhere in between? I took out my phone and looked up the number of the wine shop where we always bought that wine. I called. To my surprise, despite the late hour, someone answered. "Good evening, Dionysio's Wines. How can I help you?" a male voice said. "Hi. My husband bought a bottle of Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon from you today. It's our favorite wine. We buy it often." Yes, I remember him. A tall man, asked for that specific brand. Is there a problem? Could you tell me if the bottle was sealed when you sold it? The label wasn't damaged? There was a pause on the other end. Of course it was sealed. We don't sell open bottles. What's happened? It's just that I noticed the label is slightly damaged. I thought it might be a manufacturing defect. That's impossible. All our wines come from official distributors in perfect condition. If a bottle were damaged, we wouldn't put it up for sale. I see. Thank you. I hung up. So, the bottle was in perfect condition when Matt bought it. Therefore, it was opened after the purchase. But where and when? I tried to remember. Matt got home before I did. When I arrived, he was already cooking. How much time did he have? 2, 3 hours. Plenty of time to open a bottle, add something, and reseal it. But why? It made no sense. If he wanted to poison me, why go through this whole show with a celebratory dinner, gifts, affection? He could have done it on any other day, more discreetly. Unless it was all a show. Unless this romantic dinner, this loving husband, these 18 years of marriage were nothing more than a carefully planned play. A shiver ran down my spine. No, it couldn't be true. I knew Matt. I loved him. He loved me. We had a good marriage. But did I really know him? Or did I only know the version of Matt he wanted me to see? I sat on the sofa, my head in my hands. My thoughts were chaotic, contradictory. On one hand, all the evidence pointed to Matt. Only he had access to the wine. Only he could have put something in it. On the other hand, it was absurd. Why would he want to kill me? We had no serious problems in our marriage, no reason for such an extreme measure. Or did we? I tried to remember the last few months in more detail. Had anything changed in our life? Were there any signs that Matt was unhappy in the marriage? That he wanted out? Insurance. The words suddenly popped into my head. 6 months ago, Matt had insisted we take out significant life insurance policies on each other. He said it was the sensible thing to do, that we should be protected if something happened to one of us. I agreed without a second thought. It did seem sensible. But now, in light of recent events, it took on a completely different meaning. If I died, Matt would receive a substantial sum from the insurance. Very substantial. Enough to start a new life. Oh God, had he been planning this all along? Had he taken out the policy knowing he was going to kill me? I got up from the sofa and started pacing the room. This was insane. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe the man I loved most in the world was capable of something like this. But the facts spoke for themselves. The barbiturates in the wine, the damaged bottle label, the insurance policy. his strange behavior over the last few months. It all fit into a horrible picture, a picture of betrayal, lies, and attempted murder. I went to the window and looked out at the city at night, lights in windows, cars on the streets, people living their normal lives. And my life had just fallen apart, shattered into pieces, and I had no idea how to put them back together. The phone rang. The sudden noise made me jump. Unknown number. I hesitated to answer, but finally pressed the accept button. Yes? Ellen Rogers? A male voice I didn't recognize asked. Yes, this is she. My name is Detective Miller. I'm handling your husband's poisoning case. The hospital informed us of the situation. I need to ask you some questions. Can you come to the precinct tomorrow morning? Detective. Police. Investigation. It was all becoming too real. Yes, of course. What time? Is 10 a.m. good for you? Yes, I'll be there. Good. And one more thing, Mrs. Rogers. Don't destroy any physical evidence. The leftover wine, the glasses, the bottle. We'll need all of it for analysis. I've saved samples of the wine from both glasses. They're in the fridge. Excellent. Very prudent of you. See you tomorrow. He hung up, and I stood there with the phone in my hand, feeling completely lost. Tomorrow I would have to give a statement to the police, tell them what happened, tell them I suspected my own husband of attempted murder. But was that the truth? Or was I just going crazy from the stress and making it all up? I got into bed, but couldn't sleep. My eyes were wide open, staring into the darkness. Beside me, the spot where Matt usually slept was empty, cold, strange. I thought about our first meeting. It was 18 years ago, at a mutual friend's party. Matt was so charming, so interesting. We talked all night, discovering new things about each other. He told me about his job at an architecture firm, about his dream of building a house that was a perfect combination of functionality and beauty. I told him about my work at the insurance company, how I liked analyzing risks, finding optimal solutions. We were so different, and yet so similar. Both perfectionists, both ambitious, both a little lonely. When he asked me to marry him, 6 months after we met, I accepted without hesitation. I knew he was the man I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And now, 18 years later, I was lying in bed, wondering, did I ever really know him? Or have I been living all this time with a stranger who knew how to act the part perfectly? The morning came too quickly. I got up early despite barely sleeping. I showered, dressed, had a coffee. In the mirror, a stranger looked back at me, with dark circles under her eyes and a pale face. I tried to hide the traces of the sleepless night with makeup, but it did little good. At 9:30, I was at the police station. Detective Miller turned out to be a man in his 50s with piercing gray eyes and a weary face. He led me to a small office, offered me a seat, and turned on a recorder. "Tell me everything from the beginning," he requested. "Don't leave out any details, no matter how insignificant they may seem." And I told him everything. The birthday, the celebratory dinner, the wine, the strange smell, how we switched glasses, how Matt suddenly got sick, the barbiturates they found in his blood, the damaged bottle label, the insurance policy we took out 6 months ago. The detective listened attentively, asking clarifying questions from time to time. When I finished, he was silent for a long while, mulling over what he had heard. "Do you have reason to believe your husband wanted to poison you?" he finally asked. I sighed. "I don't know. Logic tells me yes, but my heart tells me it's impossible. We've been together for 18 years, good years. We had no serious conflicts, no reason for this horror." "Money is often a reason," the detective observed. "You mentioned a significant insurance policy. How much exactly?" "500,000 each. Meaning, if I die, Matt gets 500,000 and vice versa." Miller nodded, jotting something in his notebook. "A considerable sum. Enough to motivate some people to commit a crime, but let's consider other possibilities. Could someone else have had access to the wine? Someone who wanted to harm you or your husband?" I thought. Who could it be? We had no enemies, no one who wished us ill. Or did we? "Matt has an ex-girlfriend," I said slowly. "Veronica. They broke up shortly before we met. The breakup was difficult. She took it very hard. She even threatened him. But that was a long time ago, 18 years. Full name? Miller's interest was piqued. Veronica Soto. But honestly, I don't think she has anything to do with it. Too much time has passed. Grudges and jealousy don't have an expiration date, the detective said. We'll look into that lead. Anyone else? I tried to think, but nothing came to mind. Our life was so normal, so quiet. Work, home, occasional get-togethers with friends. No drama, no conflicts. I can't think of anyone, I admitted. We live a quiet life. We don't have enemies. All right, let's go back to your husband. Did you notice any changes in his behavior recently? And I told him everything. How Matt had become more distant in the last 6 months, the frequent late nights at work, the new password on his phone, how he had become more reserved, less open. Miller listened, nodding. Classic symptoms of someone hiding something, maybe an affair, maybe financial problems, or both. Do you think he's having an affair? The idea was painful, but at the same time, if it were true, it would explain a lot. It's one of the hypotheses. A man wants to start a new life with another woman, but a divorce isn't financially convenient. A $500,000 insurance payout solves the problem. It's a classic scheme. I felt my stomach churn. Was it really all that simple and horrible? Was Matt having an affair and had decided to get rid of me for money and a new love? We'll investigate his phone, his computer, his bank records, the detective continued. If he really planned this, we'll find evidence. People always leave tracks. And what if? What if it wasn't his idea? I said suddenly. What if someone else put the poison in? Someone who wanted to hurt me. But Matt was accidentally harmed. Then we need to find that person and figure out how he or she gained access to your home, to your wine. That was a good question. Our apartment was on the 4th floor. The door was always locked. We didn't have a cleaning lady. We cleaned and cooked ourselves. Who could have gotten in unseen? Unless someone had a key. Who has keys to your apartment besides you and your husband? Miller asked, as if reading my mind. No one. Well, my friend Jessica used to have a copy in case of emergencies, but she gave it back about 3 years ago when she moved to another city. Are you sure she gave it back? Couldn't she have made a copy? I shook my head. Jessica wouldn't do something like that. She's been my best friend since college. It's absurd to even think that in a criminal investigation, you can't rule anyone out, Miller said gently but firmly, not even those closest to you. Sometimes, they are precisely the guilty ones because they have the access, the opportunity, and the motive. His words echoed in my head as I left the police station an hour later. They told me the investigation would continue, that they would contact me as soon as they had the results from the wine sample analysis and had checked all the leads. I went to the hospital to visit Matt. He looked better than the day before. His skin had regained its normal color. His eyes were clear. He was sitting up in bed, propped against some pillows, flipping through a magazine. "Ellen," he said, "happy to see me. I'm so glad you came. I was getting bored here." I approached the bed, sat in the chair beside it, and looked at him, trying to see something a sign of a lie, of betrayal, but I only saw the familiar face of my husband, the man I loved. "How are you feeling?" "Much better. The doctors say if the tests come back fine, they'll discharge me tomorrow." "That's great." We fell silent. A strange awkwardness that had never existed before settled between us. I could feel the tension building, a host of unasked questions hanging in the air. "Ellen," Matt said finally, "I have to tell you something." My heart skipped a beat. This was it. The confession. He was going to admit he tried to kill me, or that he was having an affair, or both. "What is it?" My voice sounded firmer than I expected. He looked down, as if he couldn't meet my eyes. "These last 6 months, I've been lying to you about a lot of things, and I feel so ashamed." This was the moment of truth. "What have you been lying about, Matt?" He took a deep breath, steeling himself. "I lost my job 4 months ago. I was laid off from the architecture firm. They said the company was downsizing, that they had to get rid of the most expensive specialists. They gave me a small severance package and asked me to leave." I stared at him, unable to speak. He had lost his job 4 months ago and hadn't told me. "Why didn't you tell me?" I finally managed to say. "Because I was ashamed. Because I was afraid you'd be disappointed in me. Because I thought I'd find another job quickly, and you wouldn't even have to know. But you didn't find another job." "No, I tried. I sent out resumes, went to interviews. But the job market is tough right now. Everywhere they want young specialists willing to work for less money, and I'm 45. For many companies, that's too old." I tried to process this information. Matt had been unemployed for 4 months, so all those late nights at work were a lie. He wasn't working. Where was he going? What was he doing all day? "And you just came home every evening as if nothing was wrong, telling me made-up stories about work?" He nodded, and I saw tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Ellen. I was so tired of pretending, so tired of lying. When all this happened yesterday, when I almost died, I realized I couldn't live like this anymore. I had to tell you the truth." "And the money?" I asked. "What have we been living on these months? My salary doesn't cover all our expenses." Matt hesitated, and I knew I was about to hear another confession. "I took out a loan. A big one. I told the bank the money was for renovating the apartment, with the apartment as collateral. My apartment. The one I had bought with my own money before we got married, but which we had put in both our names after the wedding." "How much?" "Wuwan Meiyuan." I closed my eyes, feeling everything inside me tighten. $50,000 in debt, with our apartment as collateral, an apartment we could now lose if we didn't pay. "And how did you plan to pay it back, Matt? If you don't have a job?" I hoped I would find a job, that everything would work out. "And when you realized you wouldn't? What then? Did you decide it was easier to kill your wife for the insurance money?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. A heavy silence fell. Matt looked at me with such horror in his eyes that I almost believed in his innocence. "You think it was me? You think I tried to kill you? Well, wasn't it? You had access to the wine, you have a motive, the debts, the insurance. You've been lying to me for months. Why should I believe you now?" "Because I love you!" he shouted, and several nurses peeked into the room to see if everything was all right. Matt waved them off, indicating it was fine, and they left. He continued in a lower, but no less emotional voice. "Yes, I've lied. Yes, I'm a coward who couldn't bring himself to confess to his wife that he'd lost his job. Yes, I took out a loan you knew nothing about. But to kill you? That's insane. I would rather die myself than hurt you." I looked at him, trying to see if he was telling the truth. His eyes were filled with tears, his voice trembled with emotion. He seemed sincere. But I no longer knew if I could trust my feelings, my intuition. "If it wasn't you, then who?" I asked, exhausted. "Who put barbiturates in my wine? Who wanted to kill me?" "I don't know, but we'll find out together. I promise you, Ellen. We'll find who did this." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that my husband was innocent, that our marriage was real, that the love between us was not a deception, but too many doubts had taken root in my soul. "The police are investigating," I said. "They're checking all the leads. They'll investigate you too, Matt. Your finances, your phone, your computer. If you're hiding anything, they'll find it. Let them investigate. I have nothing to hide other than what I've already told you." But something didn't add up. If Matt was innocent, if he really hadn't tried to kill me, then who? Who wanted me dead? And why? I said goodbye to Matt, promising to visit him the next day, and left the hospital. The sun was shining brightly. People were rushing about their business. Life went on, and I felt like I was on the edge of a cliff, not knowing what lay ahead. Back home, I examined the wine bottle again, searching for more clues. The damaged label clearly indicated the bottle had been opened, but when and where? I called the wine shop again and asked to speak to the salesperson who sold the wine to Matt. "Good afternoon. Could you recall the exact time my husband bought the wine yesterday?" "Hold on. Let me check the records. Yesterday. Here it is. Around 5 p.m. He paid with a card, so the exact time was recorded. 5 p.m. I got home at 6, so only an hour had passed between the wine purchase and my arrival. In that time, Matt had to drive from the wine shop to our home about 20 minutes in New York traffic, then start preparing dinner. When did he have time to open the bottle, add the poison, and reseal it? Unless he had done it beforehand, unless he had bought an identical bottle earlier, prepared it, and yesterday simply brought it home. But then, where was the bottle he bought yesterday? And why was the damaged label on this specific bottle, the one I had at home? The questions multiplied, and the answers were scarce. I sat at the computer, opened our bank account, and looked at our finances. Matt had told the truth about the loan. There was indeed a large sum we had taken out 4 months ago, and a considerable amount was being deducted from our account each month to pay it off. I looked at the other transactions. Normal purchases, groceries, gas, bills. Nothing unusual, no large expenses, no suspicious transfers. Then I opened Matt's credit card statements, and here there was something interesting. Regular charges at the same coffee shop, almost daily for the last 4 months. This coffee shop was on the other side of the city, far from our home and his old job. What was he doing there every day? Who was he meeting? I searched for the coffee shop's address online. Aroma Cafe. A cozy place downtown. Photos showed it was a rather expensive establishment, with tasteful decor and above-average prices. I had to go there, talk to the staff. Maybe they knew something, maybe they had seen Matt with someone. But first, I called Jessica, my old friend, who had known Matt almost as long as I had. "Ellen, how are you? It's been too long." Her voice was so warm, so familiar, and I suddenly felt tears welling up. "Jessica, I'm in trouble. Really big trouble." And I told her everything. The birthday, the wine, the poisoning, the suspicions, what Matt had hidden from me these past months. Jessica listened in silence, only exclaiming from time to time, "Oh my God, Ellen, how awful. And you really think Matt could have done it?" I don't know what to think. On one hand, all the evidence points to him. On the other, it's Matt, my husband, the man I've known for 18 years. "People change," Jessica said softly, "especially when they're in difficult situations. Unemployment, debt, it's enormous stress. It can lead to desperation. But to murder? I don't know, Jessica. I really don't know." We talked a bit more. Jessica offered to come, to support me, but I declined. I needed time to process everything alone. After talking to her, I decided to act. Staying at home waiting for the results of the police investigation was unbearable. I had to do something, find answers for myself. I went to that coffee shop Matt had been frequenting for the last few months. Aroma Cafe turned out to be a truly cozy place, with plush sofas, dim lighting, and pleasant music. Behind the counter was a young woman in her mid-20s, a friendly blonde with a kind smile. "Good afternoon. What can I get for you?" "A cappuccino, please. And I wanted to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind." The girl nodded, starting to make the coffee. "Sure, go ahead." I took out my phone and showed her a photo of Matt. "Do you recognize this man? He comes here often." The girl looked at the photo, and her face lit up instantly. "Oh yes, of course. Matt's a regular. He comes in almost every day, has for several months now. A very nice man, always polite, leaves good tips." "And you are? If it's not too personal, I'm his wife." "Oh." The girl seemed surprised. "I didn't know he was married. He never mentioned it." "Interesting. Matt came here every day but never mentioned he was married. And did he always come alone? Or with someone?" The girl hesitated for a moment, and I knew I was about to hear something important. "Well, almost always with a woman. They always sit at that table by the window," she said, pointing to a cozy corner with a view of the street. "They talk for a long time. Sometimes they laugh. I always thought they were a couple." My heart sank. A woman. Matt met a woman here regularly, and they looked like a couple. "Could you describe her?" "Well, she's about his age, maybe a little younger. Dark hair, cut in a bob, always very well dressed, business style. A beautiful woman. Do you know her name?" "No, sorry. But if you want, I can show you the security camera footage. We have a camera that records the main room. Maybe you can see her better that way." I nodded. and the girl took me to a small back room where a monitor with the recordings was. She rewound to the previous day, around 2 p.m., and there they were, Matt and a woman, sitting at the table by the window. They really did look like a couple, heads bent close together, hands near each other on the table, smiles, laughter. I stared at the screen, feeling a coldness spread through me. There it was. The answer. The reason Matt was lying to me. The reason he had become so secretive. He was having an affair. He was cheating on me with this woman. But was that the reason for the attempted poisoning? Did he want to get rid of me to be with her? Can you take a screenshot of this moment? I asked the girl. Of course. She took several screenshots and sent them to my phone. I thanked her, paid for the coffee I hadn't even touched, and went outside. My head was spinning. Matt was cheating on me. Maybe that's why he was hiding the job loss, so I wouldn't know he was spending his days with another woman instead of at the office. But who was she? What was her name? And did she know Matt was married? I had to find her, talk to her, find out what was between them, and maybe learn if she knew anything about the poisoning. I went home, sat at the computer, and enlarged the image the girl from the coffee shop had sent me. I examined the woman's face, trying to remember if I had seen her before. And suddenly, it clicked. I knew that face. I had seen it before. But where? I started scrolling through the photos on my phone, on Matt's social media, and I found her. A company dinner for the architecture firm where Matt worked, from a year and a half ago. In one of the photos in the background was that woman. The caption read, "The team of top architects." She worked with Matt, or had worked. What if she was also laid off during the cutbacks? I looked through Matt's friends list on social media, trying to find her, and there she was. Adriana Evans, 39, architect. Her profile was semi-private, but I could see a few photos. In one of the more recent ones, she was posing smiling in front of a building. Beautiful, successful, self-assured, my rival. If you can call the woman your husband possibly tried to kill you for that. I wrote her a private message. Hi Adriana, my name is Ellen Rogers. I'm Matt's wife. I need to talk to you. It's very important. The reply came surprisingly quickly. Hi Ellen, I know who you are. Matt has told me about you. Yes, I think we need to talk. When and where? She knew about me. Matt had told her about his wife. I wondered what exactly he had told her. That I was a bad wife? That he was unhappy in his marriage? That he wanted to get rid of me? We arranged to meet in Central Park, near my apartment, in an hour. Neutral territory. A public place. I didn't know what to expect from this meeting, but I needed answers. There weren't many people in the park. The autumn wind was tearing the last leaves from the trees. The sky was overcast. I sat on a bench, wrapped in my coat, and waited. Adriana appeared right on time. She was as beautiful as in the photos, perhaps even more striking in person. A confident walk, straight back, a gaze that held yours without shyness. Ellen? She asked, approaching the bench. Yes. Please, sit. She sat beside me, leaving a respectable distance between us. We were silent for a few moments, sizing each other up. I know why you wanted to see me, Adriana said finally. You want to know about my relationship with Matt. Yes, we've been seeing each other for 6 months. Since we were both laid off from the firm, we found ourselves in the same situation, jobless, feeling useless, lost. We started meeting just to support each other. And then it turned into something more. Her honesty was almost insulting. She spoke about it with such unnerving calm, as if she were talking about going to the movies, not having an affair with a married man. Did you know he was married? Yes. He told me from the beginning. But he also told me there was no love left in your marriage, that you were just living together out of habit, that he wanted to leave you but didn't know how. Out of habit, I repeated those words in my head over and over. So that's how Matt described our marriage, a habit he wanted to break. And you were planning to be together? Adriana nodded. Yes. Matt promised he would divorce you, that we would start a new life together. And the insurance? $500,000. Did he tell you about that? Adriana frowned. What insurance? 6 months ago, we took out life insurance policies on each other. If one of us dies, the other gets $500,000. Convenient, isn't it? Especially if you want to start a new life but don't want to split assets in a divorce. Adriana's face went pale. What are you implying? Do you think Matt? Yesterday was my birthday. Matt bought a bottle of our favorite wine, but there was poison in my glass. Barbiturates. If I had drunk it, I would most likely be dead, or at best, in a coma. But we switched glasses, and he drank the poison. Adriana stared at me, her eyes wide with shock. That's impossible. Matt couldn't. He's not capable of killing. Are you sure? Do you know him that well? She fell silent, and I saw doubt and the desire to believe warring in her eyes. Where were you last night? I asked suddenly. At home. Alone. Why do you ask? Just checking all the leads. Maybe it wasn't Matt who put the poison in. Maybe it was you, a woman who wants to get rid of her lover's wife. Adriana jumped up from the bench. That's insulting. I would never do something like that. Yes, I'm having an affair with your husband, and yes, I'm not proud of it. But murder? That's insane. Then who? I stood up too, looking her in the eye. Who wanted to kill me? If it wasn't you, and it wasn't Matt, then who? I don't know. But I know for a fact it wasn't Matt. He loves you, you know. Despite everything. He told me. He said he felt guilty for falling in love with someone else, but that he couldn't stop loving you too. Her words were a knife to the heart. Matt loved us both. How was that possible? How can you love two women at once? He's in the hospital, I said, exhausted. They're discharging him tomorrow. If you want to visit him, you can. Maybe he'll tell you more than he told me. I turned and walked away, leaving Adriana standing in the middle of the park. I needed to get out of there, away from that woman, from her words, from the reality of my shattered marriage. At home, I lay on the sofa and closed my eyes, trying to piece together the puzzle. Matt had lost his job, taken out a loan, started an affair. He had lied to me for months, but had he tried to kill me? Or was it someone else, someone with their own reasons to want me dead? The phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. Detective Miller, Mrs. Rogers, we have the lab results from the wine samples you provided. The sample you labeled mine tested positive for a high concentration of phenobarbital. It's a barbiturate used in medicine as a sedative and anticonvulsant. In the dose that was in your glass, it could have caused a deep coma or death, especially combined with alcohol. And in Matt's glass? Pure wine. No foreign substances. So I hadn't been wrong. The poison was only in my glass. Someone had really tried to kill me. We've also examined your husband's financial records, Miller continued. The information about the job loss and the significant loan is confirmed. We also discovered he was regularly meeting with a woman named Adriana Evans. Do you know her? Yes, I met with her today. She admitted they're having an affair. That gives your husband a very strong motive. Debts, a mistress, an insurance policy, the classic spouse murder for profit scheme. But he drank the poisoned wine himself. Why would he do that if he was the one who put the poison in? Maybe he didn't expect you to suggest switching glasses. Maybe he was caught off guard and couldn't refuse without giving himself away. Or maybe it was a twisted plan to feign his own innocence by drinking the poison, but in a smaller dose, to survive. That version seemed too complicated, too risky. Was Matt capable of something like that? We're still investigating, Miller said. But I must tell you that for now, the primary suspect is your husband. We have enough evidence to open a criminal case against him for attempted murder. Attempted murder. My husband. The man I had lived with for 18 years. The father of my unborn children. My partner. My friend. Or had I been living all this time with a stranger I didn't know at all? After talking to the detective, I couldn't settle down. I paced the apartment, trying to decide what to do next. Believe Matt or trust the facts that all pointed to his guilt? I remembered our first meeting, our wedding, all the years we spent together. Were those feelings real? Or was he playing the part of a loving husband all this time, waiting for the right moment to get rid of me? No, I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. But then, who? If it wasn't Matt who put the poison in my wine, Suddenly, I remembered Matt's ex-girlfriend, Veronica Soto, whom I had mentioned to the detective. 18 years ago, she had suffered greatly from her breakup with Matt, even threatened him. What if she had been plotting a revenge plan all this time? What if she had learned about our home, our life, and decided to take revenge by taking his wife away from him? It seemed unlikely, but in this situation, any lead was worth investigating. I found Veronica on social media. Her profile was public, full of photos. Veronica had changed over the years. She had aged, of course, but was still an attractive woman. Married, 2 children. She lived in New York, worked as a psychologist. A psychologist. That meant she had access to various medications, including sleeping pills. I wrote her a message, introducing myself as Matt's wife and asking to meet. To my surprise, she agreed immediately. We arranged to meet the next day at a coffee shop. Veronica turned out to be a calm, composed woman, nothing like the resentful ex-girlfriend capable of revenge. She ordered a tea. A coffee I had no intention of drinking. We sat across from each other, and I studied her face, looking for signs of hatred, of a desire for revenge, but I only saw curiosity and slight caution. So, Veronica began, stirring sugar into her tea. You wanted to talk to me about Matt after all these years? I confess, I was surprised. Do you remember him? I asked, though the question was foolish. Of course she remembered. Veronica smiled, and there was a sadness to it. Of course I remember. Matt was my first real love. When I was 21, he seemed like the perfect man. Smart, talented, handsome. I thought we would be together forever, but we broke up. Yes. He said he wasn't ready for a serious relationship, that he needed to focus on his career. I was devastated. I won't lie, I even threatened him in a fit of anger. I said stupid things about how he would regret it, but it was just the pain talking, you understand? The emotions of a young girl with a broken heart. I nodded, understanding that feeling. A broken heart can make you say and do things you later regret. And then you found out he married me. Yes, 2 years after our breakup. Honestly, it was painful to find out, especially since he claimed he wasn't ready for a serious relationship. Apparently, he just wasn't ready for a serious relationship with me. There was no bitterness in her voice, only understanding and acceptance. But I moved on, she continued. I met my husband, got married, had children, built a life that makes me happy. Matt is in the past. A fond memory, nothing more. Even though that memory hurt you? Veronica looked at me intently. Ellen, I'm a psychologist. I work with people who have experienced trauma, loss, betrayal. I know that holding onto a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting your enemy to die. It only destroys you. I forgave Matt a long time ago. Not for him, but for myself. Her words sounded sincere, and I began to doubt my theory. Could this calm, balanced woman try to poison me out of revenge for a breakup so long ago? Veronica, I said slowly, with your professional background, I assume you have access to various medications. She frowned. What do you mean? I'm a psychologist, not a psychiatrist. I don't prescribe medication. You need a medical degree for that. But you could get barbiturates if you wanted to. Veronica's face hardened. Barbiturates? What are you talking about, Ellen? What happened? And I told her about the birthday, the wine, the poisoning, that the police were looking for who had tried to kill me. When I finished, Veronica was pale and shocked. My God, and you thought of me? Because I was with Matt 18 years ago? I'm checking all the leads. The detective mentioned you threatened Matt after the breakup. Veronica shook her head, as if she couldn't believe what was happening. Ellen, I understand you're desperate, that you're looking for answers, but I have nothing to do with this. Yes, I threatened Matt 18 years ago. Stupid words from a hurt girl, but I would never harm him or you. Never. I have my own life, my own family, my own happiness. Why would I destroy all that to avenge an old grudge? She was right. It made no sense. I'm sorry, I said, exhausted. It's just that I don't know who else it could be. Who would want me dead? Veronica reached across the table and touched my hand. I understand what you're going through. The feeling of betrayal, of distrust towards your loved ones, is hard. But let me give you a piece of advice, as a psychologist. Don't look for a complicated explanation where there might be a simple answer. Often, the guilty party is precisely the one all the evidence points to. Your husband had the motive, the opportunity, and the means. Perhaps you should accept that bitter truth. I nodded, grateful for her understanding, though everything inside me rebelled against it. I didn't want to believe that Matt could have done it. I didn't want to admit that 18 years of my marriage had been a lie. After meeting with Veronica, I went home, dejected. Every lead I investigated led nowhere. Every new conversation only confirmed what I refused to admit. Matt had most likely tried to kill me. That evening, Jessica called. "Ellen, how are you? I've been thinking about you all day. Do you want me to come over and keep you company?" I wanted to say no, that I could handle it alone, but the truth was, I couldn't. I needed support, a shoulder to lean on. "Yes," I admitted. "Please come. It's so hard to be alone." Jessica arrived an hour later with a bag of groceries and a bottle of red wine. Seeing my face, seeing the wine, she smiled sheepishly. "Sorry, I didn't think. It was just habit." "It's okay," I said. "I just won't be drinking it." We sat in the kitchen. Jessica made us a light dinner, salad, and an omelet. I ate automatically, barely tasting anything. Jessica told me about her life in another city, about her job, about new people she had met. I listened half-heartedly, nodding at the right moments. "Ellen," she said finally, "you're not here with me. What happened today? Any news?" And I told her about the lab results, my meeting with Adriana, the conversation with Veronica, that all roads led to a single conclusion: Matt was guilty. Jessica listened in silence, her face growing more and more serious. "I'm so sorry, Ellen," she said when I finished. "It's horrible. Betrayal always hurts, but when it comes from the person closest to you, it's just unbearable." "I still can't believe it," I confessed. "Part of me keeps hoping it's a mistake, that another explanation will be found, but all the facts point to him. I know it. I understand it with my head. But my heart refuses to accept it." Jessica poured herself a glass of wine and took a sip. "And what does Matt himself say? Have you spoken to him since you learned about his lies?" "He swears he's innocent, that yes, he lied about the job, about the loan, that yes, he's having an affair, but that he didn't try to kill me." "And do you believe him?" I thought. Did I believe him? I don't know. Before, I would have said yes without a doubt, but now I don't know if I can trust my own judgment. I didn't notice his affair. I didn't notice he had lost his job, that he was taking out a loan. Obviously, I'm not very good at judging people, not even my own husband. "Don't blame yourself," Jessica said gently. "When people want to hide something, they know how to do it, especially those who know you well and know what you pay attention to and what you don't." Her words made sense, but I still felt stupid. How could I have been so blind, so naive? We talked late into the night. Jessica stayed over in the guest room. She didn't want to leave me alone. I was grateful for her presence, for not having to lie in that empty apartment all by myself, consumed by all those horrible thoughts. In the morning when I woke up, Jessica was already in the kitchen making breakfast. The smell of fresh coffee and toast filled the apartment, creating an illusion of normalcy. "Good morning," she greeted with a smile. "How did you sleep?" "Poorly," I admitted. I had nightmares all night. About Matt, about the wine, about me dying while he just watched. Jessica nodded compassionately. "That's normal. Your mind is trying to process the trauma. Ellen, you should think about getting therapy, talking to a professional. It will help you get through this." I nodded, though the idea of therapy seemed distant and unnecessary. How can a therapist help when your husband has tried to kill you? What words can heal a wound like that? After breakfast, Jessica got ready to leave. She had to get back home, to work. We hugged goodbye, and she promised to call every day to check on me. Once I was alone, I sat at the computer. I needed a distraction, something to occupy my mind, which kept returning to the same thoughts. I opened my work email and started replying to the messages that had piled up. It was then that I saw a strange email. It had arrived 2 days ago from an unknown address, with no subject line. Normally, I would delete such emails without opening them, assuming they were spam. But something prompted me to click on it. Inside was just a short text. If you want to know the truth about what happened, come to Central Park tomorrow at 3 p.m. The bench by the fountain, come alone. My heart began to race. Who wrote this, and what truth did they want to tell me? I checked the date of the email. It had arrived the day before my birthday, before the poisoning. Someone knew what was going to happen. Someone had tried to warn me. Or was it a trap? I reread the email several times, trying to guess who could have sent it. The email address told me nothing, just a random collection of letters and numbers, an anonymous account created specifically for this message. What should I do? Go to this meeting or ignore the email, considering it someone's cruel joke? But what if it was really important? What if someone knew something that could help uncover the truth? I called Detective Miller and told him about the email. "Did you save it?" he asked. "Yes, of course." "Forward it to me." "We'll try to trace the sender's IP address, but they likely used a VPN or a proxy, and we might not be able to identify them." I forwarded the email and waited for him to receive it. "And what about the meeting?" I asked. "Should I go?" Miller was silent, thoughtful. It could be dangerous. We don't know who sent this email or what their intentions are. On the other hand, it could be an opportunity to get important information. "If you decide to go, I'll arrange for surveillance. Several plainclothes officers will be nearby to intervene if there's any danger." "Okay," I agreed. "I'll go. I need to know the truth, no matter who's offering it." The time until the meeting dragged on. I tried to go about my business work, clean, cook, but I couldn't stop thinking about this meeting, about who I would see, what they would tell me. At 2 p.m., I started getting ready. I put on simple clothes, jeans, a sweater, a jacket. Nothing flashy, nothing to attract attention. I grabbed my purse with my phone, wallet, and keys. Before leaving, I called the hospital for Matt. The nurse told me he had been discharged that morning, that he was already home. Our home. But I didn't want to go back there while he was there. Not after everything I had discovered. I arrived at Central Park 20 minutes early. I looked around, trying to spot the police officers Miller had mentioned. I saw a man with a newspaper on a nearby bench, a woman with a baby stroller walking not far away. They could be cops, or they could be ordinary visitors. I approached the fountain, sat on the designated bench, and took out my phone, pretending to check a message, though I was really just trying to calm my nerves. 3, 3, 5, 3, 10, 3, 15. No one approached. I started to think it was a cruel joke, that no one was coming, that I had wasted my time and frayed my nerves for nothing. And then a woman approached the bench. Young, in her mid-20s, with dark sunglasses and a scarf over her head, she sat down next to me without looking at me. "Ellen Rogers?" she asked in a low voice. "Yes. Are you the one who wrote to me?" "Yes. Thank you for coming." "Who are you? And what do you want to tell me?" The woman was silent, as if searching for the right words. "My name is Camila. I used to work at the architecture firm with your husband and Adriana Evans. I know something you don't know. Something that could change everything." My heart sped up. "Go on." Camila looked around, making sure no one could hear us. "Adriana and Matt. Their relationship isn't what it seems. It's not just the romance of two lonely people who found comfort in each other after losing their jobs. Then what is it? Adriana planned the whole thing. She found out that you and Matt had taken out significant life insurance policies. I don't know how, maybe she overheard a conversation, maybe she saw the documents. And she decided to take advantage of it. She seduced Matt, made him fall in love with her, and then started planting the idea that the only way for them to be together was to get rid of you. I listened, unable to believe what I was hearing. Are you saying that Adriana manipulated Matt? That she made him try to kill me? Not exactly. Matt didn't try to kill you. Adriana did. The world around me stopped. What? On the day of your birthday, Adriana went to your apartment. She knew Matt would be preparing the celebratory dinner. She knew about your traditional wine. She went under the pretext of needing to pick up some documents Matt had forgotten at her place. He let her in. They talked for a couple of minutes at the door, and then he went back to the kitchen. Adriana stayed in the entryway, supposedly to put on her shoes. But instead, she went to the living room, where Matt had already poured the wine into the glasses, and she added the barbiturates to your glass. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Adriana, my husband's mistress, she tried to kill me. How do you know this? Were you there? No. But Adriana told me. We were good friends, colleagues, she trusted me, and the day before, she confessed what she was going to do. I tried to stop her, to convince her it was crazy, but she wouldn't listen. She was obsessed with the idea of being with Matt, of getting that money, of starting a new life. And you did nothing? You didn't warn me? You didn't report it to the police? Camila lowered her head. I didn't think she would actually do it. I thought it was just a fantasy, emotions that would pass. But when I heard what happened, that your husband had been hospitalized for poisoning, I realized she had really done it, and I got scared. Scared that if I told, Adriana would know it was me, and then I might be the next victim. But you wrote to me. Yes, because I can't live with this. I can't know that an innocent man might suffer because of my silence. Your husband didn't try to kill you, Ellen. Yes, he lied. Yes, he cheated on you. But the murderer is Adriana. I sat on the bench, trying to process all this information. Adriana, the calm, beautiful Adriana, who had sat next to me in the park and told me that Matt loved me despite everything. She had lied, she had manipulated, she had tried to kill me. Do you have proof? Anything to corroborate your words? Camila shook her head. No, just my testimony. Adriana told me in person. No recordings, no messages. She's too smart for that, so it's just your word against hers. I know. That's why I was afraid to go to the police. Without proof, they can't do anything. But I thought you should know, that you have the right to know the truth. I looked at this young woman who was taking a risk by meeting me, by telling me everything. Thank you, I said sincerely, for having the courage to tell me. What are you going to do? Camila asked. I don't know, but I will find a way to prove that Adriana is guilty. I won't let her get away with this. Camila nodded and got up from the bench. Be careful. Adriana is smart and ruthless. She won't stop at anything to get what she wants. She left, disappearing into the park crowd, and I remained seated, mulling over what I had heard. The man with the newspaper approached me. He was one of the police officers. Mrs. Rogers, we recorded everything. The conversation was audio recorded. It could serve as evidence, but she said she has no proof against Adriana. Only her word, her testimony. That's evidence in itself. We can bring Adriana in for questioning, check her alibi for the time of the crime, investigate her financial records for the purchase of barbiturates. If she's guilty, we'll find the signs. I nodded, feeling hope stir within me. Maybe Matt really was innocent. Maybe our marriage could be saved. Maybe all was not lost. That evening, I met with Matt. He had returned home after being discharged from the hospital, and we had agreed to talk seriously about everything that had happened. He looked tired, older. Dark circles under his eyes, a day's worth of stubble, slumped shoulders, nothing like the confident, successful architect I had married 18 years ago. We sat in the living room, where just a few days earlier we had celebrated my birthday. The table was clean, no trace of that terrible evening. Ellen, Matt began. I know I've caused you so much pain with my lies, with my betrayal, and I'm not asking for your forgiveness because I know I don't deserve it. But I want you to know, I never tried to kill you. Never. The very thought is absurd and unbearable to me. I know, I said, and I told him about my meeting with Camila, about what I had learned about Adriana. As I spoke, Matt's face changed. First disbelief, then shock, then anger. Adriana? She did it? She tried to kill you? Yes, and she possibly manipulated you into being her accomplice without you even knowing it. Matt covered his face with his hands. Oh my God, what an idiot. What a blind, gullible idiot. It's not your fault you were manipulated, I said, though a part of me was still angry with him for the lies, for the infidelity, for everything. But it is your fault for cheating on me, for lying to me about everything else. I know, and I'll understand if you can't forgive me. if you want a divorce. Divorce. The word hung in the air between us. A week ago, the idea of divorce seemed unthinkable, but now, I don't know what I want, Matt, I admitted. I need time. Time to think about everything, to understand my feelings, to get over this trauma. I understand. I'll wait as long as it takes. We sat in silence, each lost in thought. Then Matt said, I'll leave. I'll rent an apartment or stay with a friend. You need space, and I don't want to cause you any more discomfort with my presence. I wanted to protest, to say it was his home too. But the truth was, I really needed to be alone, without him, without the reminder of what had happened. Thank you, I said softly. The next day, Detective Miller summoned me to the precinct. We have news, he said as I entered his office. We brought Adriana Evans in for questioning. At first, she denied everything, but when we told her we had a witness, she started to falter, and then we found proof. What kind? Adriana purchased phenobarbital online from an illegal supplier. We found the correspondence in her email, which she thought she had deleted. But nothing is ever truly deleted on the internet if you know where to look. My heart pounded. So it really was her? Yes. She confessed everything. She told us how she planned it, how she found out about the insurance policies, how she manipulated your husband. She said the idea came to her when she realized Matt would never voluntarily divorce you, that he was too attached to you despite his affair with her. She decided the only way to be with him was to get rid of you, and get the insurance money in the process. I listened, feeling a mixture of relief and horror. Relief that Matt was innocent, that our marriage wasn't based on his desire to kill me. And horror at the thought that someone could plan my murder in such cold blood. What will happen to her? She's been arrested. She's being charged with attempted murder. Given the premeditation and the coldness of the execution, she'll get a significant sentence, 10 to 15 years, maybe more. I nodded. Justice had been served. The guilty party had been punished. But why did I feel no satisfaction? Why was there only an emptiness inside? Your husband is completely cleared of suspicion, Miller continued, though of course his actions, the lie about the job, the affair, that's your business, but they have nothing to do with the crime. Thank you, I said. For everything. For finding the truth. Leaving the police station, I felt strange, as if a chapter of my life had ended, but I didn't know what would come next. Matt wasn't guilty of attempted murder, but he was guilty of infidelity, of lies, of destroying the trust between us. Could I forgive him? Did I want to forgive him? I didn't know the answers to those questions. At home, I found a letter from Matt. He had written it by hand and left it on the kitchen table before he left. Ellen, my dearest Ellen, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I have destroyed your trust, that I have caused you unbearable pain, and I will understand if you never want to see me again. But I want you to know that I love you. I have always loved you, even when I was lying to you, even when I was cheating on you. Deep in my soul, I knew you were the most important person in my life. Adriana was a mistake, a weakness, an attempt to escape from the shame, the fear, my feeling of worthlessness after losing my job. But that's not an excuse, it's just a fact. I am going to work on myself, go to a psychologist, do everything I can to be a better person. Not for you though, of course for you too, but mainly for myself, because I never want to be that person who betrays his loved ones again. I will wait as long as it takes, and if you ever decide to give me another chance, I will do everything I can to deserve that trust. Yours, Matt. I read the letter several times, feeling tears roll down my cheeks. He loved me, despite everything, but was love enough to rebuild what was broken? Days turned into weeks. I returned to my normal life, work, home, occasional get-togethers with friends. Matt called sometimes, asked how I was doing, suggested we meet to talk. I agreed. We met in coffee shops, walked in the park, talked about this and that, cautiously, like two strangers getting to know each other. He was really going to a psychologist, working on himself. I saw the changes. He became more open, more willing to talk about his feelings, his fears, his weaknesses. He no longer tried to be perfect, no longer hid his problems, and slowly, very slowly, something inside me began to change. The anger faded, giving way to understanding. The pain dulled, turning into a sad acceptance. I didn't know if we could ever go back to what we were. Probably not. That naive, unconditional love we had at the beginning had died that night. I smelled a strange scent in my wine glass. But maybe we could build something new, more mature, more conscious, based not on illusions, but on reality, on the understanding that people are imperfect, that they make mistakes, that they can hurt even those they love, and that forgiveness is not forgetting, not justifying. It's the choice to let go of anger, to free yourself from the burden of resentment, not for the other person, but for yourself. I didn't know if I had forgiven Matt. I wasn't sure if I could ever fully trust him again, but I knew one thing. I wanted to try. I wanted to give us a chance. 3 months had passed since that terrible birthday. Adriana was in pretrial detention, awaiting trial. Matt had found a new job at a small architecture firm, though with a lower salary than before. We started paying off the loan, little by little, cutting expenses, living more modestly, and we began to rebuild our marriage. Slowly, cautiously, step by step. Matt moved back home. First into the guest room, then, a few weeks later, into our bedroom. We went to couples therapy, worked on regaining trust, learned to communicate again. It wasn't easy. There were days when I woke up and felt so much rage towards him that I couldn't even look at him. There were nights when I was tormented by nightmares of that evening, of the poisoned wine, of how close I had come to death. But there were good moments too. Moments when we laughed together like we used to, when we held hands walking in the park, when we looked into each other's eyes and saw not betrayal, but a love that had survived all of it. And I began to believe that maybe we really could get through this, that our marriage would emerge from this crisis stronger than before. And then, one ordinary afternoon, everything changed again. I came home from work and found the front door ajar. Not forced, not broken, just ajar, as if someone had left and forgotten to close it, or as if someone had entered and wanted me to know. My heart sped up. I took out my phone, ready to call the police, but then I heard a noise from the living room. Voices. Matt was talking to someone. I entered slowly, closing the door behind me, and headed for the living room. What I saw froze me in place. Matt was sitting on the sofa. Across from him, in an armchair, was a woman. It wasn't Adriana. She was in prison. It was another woman, about my age, with short dark hair and piercing gray eyes. "Ellen," Matt said, jumping up when he saw me. His face was pale. Fear was reflected in his eyes. "I can explain everything." "Who is she?" I asked, looking at the stranger. The woman stood up slowly and looked at me with a strange mixture of regret and determination. "My name is Sylvia," she said, "and I'm very sorry we have to meet under these circumstances. But there's something you need to know about your husband, something he's been hiding from you all these years." I felt the floor drop out from under me again. More secrets, more lies. When would it end? "What else?" I managed to say. "What else have you been hiding from me, Matt?" He was silent, unable to speak. Sylvia looked at him, then at me. "Matt has a daughter," she said calmly. "She's 14 years old, and I'm her mother." The world around me started to spin. A daughter. Matt had a daughter with another woman, 14 years old. That meant she was born 4 years after our wedding, when we were trying to have children and couldn't, when I was undergoing tests, treatments, blaming myself for not being able to get pregnant, and he already had a daughter with another woman. "Is it true?" My voice sounded strange, distant. "Matt, tell me it's not true." He covered his face with his hands, and from his silence I knew it was true. My husband, who had sworn his love, who had promised to change, with whom I was trying to rebuild our marriage, had a daughter with another woman, a daughter whose existence I had known nothing about for 14 years. And in that moment, I understood that this was not the end. The story that had begun with a poisoned wine on my birthday was just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it lay layers of lies, betrayals, and secrets I had never even suspected. And I would have to uncover them all if I wanted to understand who my husband really was, and who I had been all these years. A beloved wife, or just a convenient cover for his double life? I sank slowly onto the sofa, feeling my legs give way. Sylvia was still standing, looking at me with the same regretful expression. Matt was sitting with his head in his hands, unable to look up. "Tell me everything," I said, my voice surprisingly calm given the storm of emotions raging inside me. "From the beginning. Don't leave anything out. I have the right to know the truth." Sylvia sat back down in the armchair and clasped her hands in her lap. She looked tired, as if she had been carrying this burden for too long. "I met Matt 15 years ago," she began. "I was an interior designer, and he was an architect. We met on a project. We grew close. I knew he was married, but I fell in love. I thought it would just be for the project, that when it was over, everything would end on its own. But it didn't." I listened, feeling each word pierce me like a sharp knife. When I realized I was pregnant, I told him. He was shocked. He offered me money for an abortion, but I couldn't do it. I wanted this child, even if her father couldn't be by her side. "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked at Matt, and he finally looked up. His eyes reflected so much pain, so much shame, that for a moment I felt sorry for him, but only for a moment. "Because I'm a coward," he said in a hoarse voice. "Because I was afraid of losing you. Afraid you would leave, that our marriage would fall apart." Sylvia agreed to keep quiet, to raise our daughter alone. "I paid her child support, saw her from time to time, but you knew nothing." "All these years," I whispered. 15 years. While we were trying to have a child, while I was blaming myself for being infertile, while I was undergoing treatments, tests. You already had a daughter. I know how that sounds. Sylvia leaned forward. "I'm not trying to justify myself, or Matt. What we did was wrong, but I didn't come here just for nothing. There's a reason I can't stay silent anymore." "What reason?" "My daughter, our daughter Danielle, needs an operation. An urgent heart operation. Without it, she won't live for more than a year. The operation costs $50,000. I don't have that kind of money. Matt can't pay for it either, especially after the loan you two took out." I looked at Matt. Agony was written on his face. "Did you know about this? About the operation?" "Sylvia told me a month ago. I've been trying to get the money. I've contacted foundations, asked for more loans, but they've all been denied. We already have a large loan. We can't take on another. I didn't know what to do. A month ago, before Adriana tried to poison me, so all this time, while we were rebuilding our marriage, while I thought we were moving towards healing, he was carrying this burden alone. The secret of his daughter, the fact that the girl was dying and he couldn't help her. Why didn't you tell me?" My voice broke. "Even now, after everything that's happened, after you promised we would be honest with each other." "Because I had no right to ask you for help," Matt replied. "After everything I've done to you, after the betrayal, the lies, how could I come to you and say, I have a daughter with another woman and I need money to save her life?" He was right. He really had no right to ask. But they were asking now. And I had to decide what to do with this information. "Sylvia," I said, turning to her, "why now? Why did you decide to tell me?" "Because there's no time left. The doctors say the operation must be done in the next 2 months, or it will be too late. I've tried everything. Foundations, online fundraisers, public assistance. But $50,000 is too much for a single mother. And I thought, the insurance." My heart skipped a beat. The insurance. "Matt told me you had life insurance policies for $500,000 each. I'm not asking for all of it, but if you could help, even a part of it, Danielle is not to blame for any of this. She didn't choose to be born from an affair. She's just a child who wants to live." I looked at this woman who had destroyed my family 15 years ago, and I saw in her eyes the desperation of a mother willing to do anything for her child. And I thought of that one 4-year-old girl whom I had never met, who didn't know I existed, but who was my husband's daughter. An innocent child, caught in the mistakes of others. "You want me to give you money for the operation of my husband's daughter with another woman?" I said slowly. "That's what you're asking me." Sylvia nodded, not looking away. "I know how it sounds. I know I have no right to ask, but I have no other choice. Danielle is all I have. I will do anything to save her, anything. I got up, walked to the window, and looked out at the city at dusk. The lights in the windows, the life that went on despite everything. Conflicting feelings battled inside my head. Anger at Matt for another lie, another betrayal. Pity for an innocent child paying for the sins of adults. Bitterness at the realization that maybe this was why Matt and I couldn't have children, because he already had a daughter he was hiding from me. "Ellen," Matt came up behind me. "I'm not asking you to help. I have no right. But if there's even the slightest chance, Danielle is not to blame for our problems. She's just a child. A child you didn't tell me about for 15 years. I know. And I'll understand if you say no. I'll understand if you divorce me right now and never want to see me again. I deserve it. But Danielle, she doesn't deserve to die from my mistakes." I closed my eyes, trying to listen to my inner voice amidst all the chaos. What should I do? Help my husband's daughter with another woman, or refuse protect myself? Set the boundaries I should have set long ago? "I want to meet her," I said suddenly, surprising myself with my own words. "Danielle, before I make a decision, I need to see her." Sylvia and Matt looked at each other. Of course, Sylvia nodded. "Whenever you want." "Right now?" "Yes. Tomorrow," I decided. "I need tonight to think. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., tell me where." Sylvia gave me the address of the hospital where Danielle was. They left together, leaving me alone in an apartment that no longer felt like my home. I sat on the sofa, covered my face with my hands, and allowed myself to cry. For the first time in all these months, I wasn't crying from anger or resentment, but from pure grief. Grief for the lost years, for the broken illusions, for the marriage that no longer existed. The next day, I went to the hospital. Sylvia was waiting for me at the entrance. We walked down a long hallway to the cardiology wing, and with every step, my heart beat faster. What would I say to this girl? How would I look her in the eye? Danielle was in a room, connected to monitors. When I entered, she looked up at me, and I froze. My God, she was the spitting image of Matt. The same brown eyes, the same face shape, the same smile, though now it was pale and weak. "Hi," she said. "You must be Ellen. Mom told me you were coming." "Hi, Danielle." "Yes, that's me." I sat in the chair by the bed. Sylvia tactfully left the room, leaving us alone. "So, you're my dad's wife," Danielle said, and there was no reproach in her voice, only curiosity. "Sounds weird, Dad. I'm used to thinking of him just as Uncle Matt who comes to visit. He visited you sometimes?" "Sometimes. On my birthday, on Christmas. He'd bring presents, ask how school was going. I knew he was my biological father. Mom told me when I was 10. But I also knew he had another life, another family. And I didn't resent him for it. It's just the way things are." Such maturity for a 4-year-old girl, such understanding of a situation she found herself in through no fault of her own. "Danielle, your mother told me about your illness, that you need an operation." She nodded. "Yes, a congenital heart defect. It didn't bother me before, but this last year it's gotten worse. If I don't have the surgery, my heart will fail. That's what the doctors say." "And you're not scared?" Danielle thought for a moment. "Of course I'm scared. I'm 14. I want to live, to go to college, to fall in love, to travel, to see the world. But if it's my time to die, at least I know my mom did everything she could, that she fought for me until the very end." I looked at this fragile child in the hospital bed, and I felt something break inside me. All the anger, all the resentment, all the rage I had accumulated towards Matt, towards Sylvia, it all melted away in the face of a simple fact. Before me was a child who wanted to live, a child who needed help. "Danielle," I said, taking her hand, "you're going to have your operation. I'll take care of it." The girl's eyes widened. "Really? But why? You don't have to. I'm the daughter of the woman who was with your husband." "Because you are not to blame for the mistakes of adults. Because every child deserves a chance to live. And because, despite everything, I can't stand by and watch an innocent person die when it's in my power to help." Danielle started to cry, and I hugged her. This child who was my husband's daughter, but not my daughter. And in that moment, I understood. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is strength. The strength to let go of the past, to not hold a grudge, to not let bitterness poison your soul. When I left the room, Sylvia was in the hallway. Her face was streaked with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, Ellen. I know I don't deserve your generosity, but thank you." "It's not for you," I said honestly. "Or for Matt. It's for Danielle. Only for her." I took out a $50,000 loan, using my share of the apartment as collateral. The surgery took place 2 weeks later. It lasted 8 hours, and the entire time, I sat in the hospital hallway next to Sylvia and Matt. We barely spoke, each lost in our own thoughts, our own prayers. When the surgeon came out and said the operation was a success, that Danielle would live, I felt a relief, a joy so immense, as if she were my own daughter. And maybe, in a way, she was. Not biologically, but spiritually, because I had saved her life. I had given her the chance she deserved. Another 2 months passed. Danielle was recovering, returning to her normal life. I visited her several times, brought her books, fruit, we talked, and with each visit, I grew more fond of this intelligent, mature for her age girl. And Matt and I finally talked. We talked seriously about our future. We met in the same park where I had once met Adriana. We sat on a bench, and I told him what I had decided. "Matt, I can't continue with our marriage." He nodded as if he had expected it. "I understand. It's not because I don't love you. I do love you, or I did, I don't know anymore. It's because I can't keep living in uncertainty, with the constant fear of discovering another secret, another lie. You need time to figure yourself out, to know who you are, what you want. And I need time to heal, to recover, to find myself again. So, a divorce. Yes, but not out of anger, not for revenge, but because it's the right thing for both of us." Matt took my hand, brought it to his lips, and kissed it. "Thank you, Ellen, for everything, for saving Danielle when you could have refused, for giving me the chance to be better, even if it means losing you. I will always love you, you know that, and I will remember the good that was between us. The 18 years weren't a complete lie. There was a lot of love, a lot of happiness. We just grew in different directions, and that's okay." We sat for a while longer, holding hands, saying goodbye to the past, to the people we were, to the marriage that once seemed unbreakable. We divorced 6 months later, amicably, without scandals, without fighting over assets. We sold the apartment, paid off all the loans, and split what was left equally. Matt rented a small apartment near Sylvia and Danielle, and started spending more time with his daughter, rebuilding a relationship damaged by years of absence. And I bought a small studio on the outskirts of the city. I started a new life. I met new people, signed up for painting classes, something I had dreamed of for years but never found the time for. I started traveling weekend trips to nearby cities, but it was a start. A year after the divorce, I met Andrew. He was a history teacher at a high school, divorced, with 2 grown children, a calm, kind, and above all, honest man. With him, there wasn't the passion I had with Matt at the beginning, but there was reliability, stability, a deep respect, no secrets, no dark corners. We started dating slowly, without rushing. I was in no hurry for new commitments, for a new marriage. I simply enjoyed the company, the conversations, the walks together. And Matt married Sylvia 2 years after our divorce. Not for love, as he confessed to me in one of our rare meetings, but out of a sense of responsibility, a desire to give Danielle a real family. They were happy in their own way, a quiet happiness, without grand emotions, but with a deep mutual understanding. As for Adriana, she got 12 years in prison for attempted murder. I felt no anger or desire for revenge towards her, only relief that justice had been served. Now, sitting by the window of my small apartment, sipping coffee and watching the sunrise, I think about the journey I've taken, about that birthday when everything changed, about the strange smell of the wine that saved my life, about the switched glasses that revealed the truth. Sometimes life breaks us to make us stronger. Sometimes betrayal hurts more than physical pain. But in the end, we always have a choice, to stay stuck in resentment and bitterness, or to move forward, forgiving not for others, but for ourselves. I chose the latter. And though the path was painful, though there were many tears and sleepless nights, I don't regret it. Because now I know myself better. I know my strength, my limits, my capacity for compassion, even where it's not expected. And years later, at the wedding of Danielle, a beautiful, healthy young woman with a bright future ahead of her, when she came up to me, hugged me, and whispered, "Thank you for my life," I understood that it had all been worth it. Every tear, every sleepless night, every painful decision. Because in the end, the meaning of life is not to avoid pain, but to go through it and come out on the other side a better person than you were before. My story began with a poisoned wine and a switched glass, but it ended with healing, forgiveness, and a new life that I built with my own hands. And that was the most valuable thing I could take from that whole nightmare.